Hello, it's Duncan. We're a few hours now into our refactoring of the Gilded Rose error handling code, and I'm hopeful that we can finish today. So let's just remind ourselves where we are. What we've done is we've refactored code that could throw exceptions and therefore fail, if not silently in Kotlin, at least not give us any clues that it was going to fail, to code that returns a result type, in this case result for k. And the choices there are a success or a failure. Success contains the thing that we would return if we hadn't thrown an exception, and the failure contains information about how we failed. And we push that all the way through this far, really. So file load items now return the result. Looking in here, there is another way to mark things, and that is, for example, this stock list save to, which can fail. We can mark as throws and give it the exception type. Now we know that this could throw IOException because it does IO. Writers throw IOExceptions. Now this doesn't actually help us in Kotlin at all, really, but what it does do is it tells the compiler to emit code that tells Java that it might throw IOExceptions, because IOException being a checked exception, any Java code calling this would have to account for it. It does help a little bit because people who read this can see that it throws, but we'd like to do better. I'll leave that in here for now as it's a clue to us as we go on. Looking up then, what calls the code that we have changed last, which was file load items, and the answer is a stock type here. Now stock is an object that remembers where stock is saved, which file. It's told how to update it if it's changed, and it manages when it needs to be updated. So you load a stock list and it is able to update it if it's out of date. This function is horrible, so we'd hope to make more sense of it as we refactor as well. Still left in the signature of this function is this nothing question mark, our migration from nullable. So we're going to change this to return our stock list loading error. And if we do that, then we can change this to say on failure, just return the failure. That should break a corner of this. And here it is. And the reason for that is that the type of that this handle needs here is now stock list loading error. We can import that. But again, because we're just saying on failure here, we don't really care about this type. We're just raising an error, so it doesn't really matter to this code at the moment. We'll fix that soon, I hope. Okay, it's all good. Let's go and have a look at what we can do with stock. First of all, there is a little warning here, so let's fix that. And then secondly, the logic is a little convoluted. What we do here is we find a stock list that might be updated, and then we ask, is it updated? But in fact, we always update it if we copy it here. Potentially at least always update it. The last modified will be changed. This was my attempt to separate calculations from actions, but I don't think it's gone well. So what I think we'll do is we will say, once we've copied it, we know if it's out of date, then we need to save it. And for now, I'm just going to put that in also, in order not to change the sense of the code. So we can put this code in here. And this is it then, the thing we were just operating on. That allows us to take this away. Let's check we're right by running the tests. And we were, so that looks a bit better. Now we can use the pattern we used before of using map on the error type to handle calling some code and wrapping in its success or allowing its failure to propagate. So we'll do that here. We'll say map, and we're going to give our parameter the name that the code inside expected. There, and then potentially loaded stock list. It's the result of that. And we can return the result of that expression. So again, what's this saying? It's saying, let's call load items. If it's successful, then unwrap the result and take the thing inside it and pass it into this block. and then wrap that back up again in a success if this succeeded. And if this failed, then just pass on the stock list loading error that came from inside here. That allows this to be a single expression. Okay, now this potentially updated stock list is just our result, so we can inline that. The shape of this is beginning to come out. Run the tests, and we're still good. Okay, let's now look in save. Now there are so many ways for this to fail. So we have, it can fail in this creating temp file, it can fail in saving twice, it can fail in another temp file, it can fail renaming. Now a problem with result types is that we only know that something failed if we look at the result. And there is no result of this. This returns void or unit in Kotlin. In order to use a result type, we'll need a result to check. And one way we can do that is to take this thing and have it return the thing that it saved. So in this case, we'll say, hey, this returns a stock list. Now it's going to return the same stock list as it started with in this case. So it's going to return stock list here. That won't have changed any of our code, but it does allow us to say that this is our result. So instead of this being our result, this is our result. That change then is a change to let, which is a subtle little change. But let's just run the code and check that we are still logically correct. So also returns the left-hand side of this block. Let returns the result of this. And so let is returning the result of save. And we can make this even nicer, or a little bit nicer, by making this the receiver. So if we make this the receiver, and we rename this to saved, then the let becomes redundant. See, even IntelliJ knows. So we can say remove that let call. And so it's a little bit hidden inside here, but what we're saying is when we're out of date, then we copy and we return the saved version of the copy. Otherwise, we just return the thing that we loaded in the first place. We'll check that actually works by running the tests. And it does. Now we'd like saved to return a result. So we stock list or something. What should that something be? Well, we could create another type for this layer, but I think it's reasonable to reuse the layer underneath us because these are all in the same package. They're all in this persistence package. So that means that we can use stock list loading error here. Now, that means that if we succeed, we need to return success of this now. Now this is now not compiling because the result of this will be a result with a result inside it. Because this saved is now returning a result, but we're wrapping that result because map will do it. Solution to that problem is the horrible FlatMap. A FlatMap means that we actually need to wrap both branches in a result, but you see that compiles and runs nicely. Now, we haven't again changed the actual behavior here, we've just changed the types to allow us to change behavior. What should we do in here? Well, we've got a whole bunch of things that might fail because of IO. So I think in here, we're just going to say try and return success. But if we were to catch an IO exception, then this should return a failure. And that failure should use the IO that we had in our as an error type. And this, if you remember, uses the message, which might be null. So do that. Now, we want to pull this out of here. That makes this an expression. And I would tend to drop that onto another line. Now, all the ways that this can fail, well, all the IO ways this can fail, which are all the expected ways, will be parceled up into this stock loading error. In fact, we could even tighten that up a bit and say, we happen to know that this is IO in here. Now we've done that, and we're sharing this error type between these two files. I think probably it's worthwhile pulling it out into its own place. So let's lift that into stock list loading error in its own file. Okay, how is stock looking? Well, it's not looking bad, actually. This is still a little bit complicated. So if we take this thing and say, what if that was a method? Then that would be updated. Well, technically it would be update because we're updating the stock list. So let's call it update. And if we make this the receiver, that didn't work. Then this is more logically updated. And one final thing, it would be nice if we could pull this out of here in order to just see what relies on the state. And you see here we rely on the stock file in here. So we can give ourselves a parameter. And we need to tell it that this is file and add it into here. Where possible, if it helps with the naming, I like to pull things out into the top level. So this now, if we reorder these parameters, can be saved too. And that allows us to read this quite nicely. So this is take the stock file, load its items, take the loaded items, and if they're out of date, then take the loaded version, updated, and save to. Otherwise, it's just the loaded version. Run the test one last time. And check that in. And this, I think, is use result for K in stock, because we really weren't before. Oh, no errors in that. Okay, we are almost done, I promise. Oh, but first, staring us in the face is this ugliness here. I don't know what that's doing, IntelliJ. We'll just amend commit to get rid of that ugliness. So finally, in our conversion of exceptions to an error type, we had the fact that our exceptions were carrying a message, so that when we caught them at the top level, we could put that message out into our logs in order to allow us to work out what went wrong. At the moment, though, as we move back up into our routes and our list handler, actually while we're there, you can see that it's this catch-all analytics that will do that. We'll take any exceptions and put the stack trace and the message into our logs. This list handler is simply saying error. So for all of that work that we did, categorizing our errors and putting data into them and so on, that's all gone into this exception that has the message could not load stock list, and that's always in our logs if something goes wrong. So after all that time, we are worse off, but we can fix that with this one neat trick. Actually, I think we'll end on a cliffhanger because this one neat trick will make a good video all by itself. If you'd like to know when that video is published, then you could subscribe to the channel, maybe even do a notification thing. If you've enjoyed this, then please like the video. And if you have enjoyed this, then I think you'll enjoy the book that I wrote with Nat Price called Java to Kotlin Refactoring Guidebook, where we have a whole chapter, Exceptions to Errors, where we cover this sort of error handling in Kotlin. Thanks for watching.